PCR as he is popularly known. The Distinguished Service Award of our club, a rare honor that we have bestowed upon very few deserving individuals so far, will be presented to Mr. Ramakrishna for his immense contribution to the fields that he has been associated with. Indeed, for someone whose childhood ambition was to become an engine driver, PCR has propelled his career in multiple directions and has not only distinguished himself, but also has left an indelible mark in each one of them. While I can go on and on, I will leave the honor of narrating his achievements to Rotarian Madhu, who will be reading and presenting the DSA citation to Mr. Ramakrishna shortly. Also sharing the stage today are two other icons from the world of communication who have distinguished themselves in their own fields. Dr. Gowri Ramnarayan and our own Rotarian V. Sriram. Both of them will be felicitating Mr. Ramakrishna. More about them later. May now request our President Magdu to deliver the presidential welcome address.
Good evening to all. My warm welcome to our awardee today, Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna. Welcome you, sir. Welcome to our guest of honor, Mrs. Gowri, Ramnarayan and Mr. Sriram. Welcome. Sriram has been a homecoming, so double welcome. And welcome our Southerners, my co-presidents, friends. Today we are honored and privileged to present Distinguished Service Award to Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna, the renowned theatre personality. I remember growing up, my younger days, listening to his news bulletin. As Rotarian Madhu had put it, his stentorian voice and clarity of pronunciations, I still remember them. Okay, makes me nostalgic thinking about it. As you all know, vocational service is the second important avenue of service for Rotary. Rotary attributes great value and importance to the service next only to the club service. And you know, our club's vocational service has been one of our pillars of service to society. Every year we do projects which reach more than 500 people, be it various vocations like tailoring, fashion designing, basic computer courses, home nursing and so on. And this crown of our vocational service is a Distinguished Service Award which we give it to very few people in the past so many years. And today we are privileged and honored to be presenting this award to Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna. In the beginning of the year, I made a wish to Rotarian Madhu that we should honor somebody from the media industry. Since I come from media industry, media background, I had a selfish motive that I honor somebody from media industry. And then I also requested Madhu to head a committee to choose a deserving candidate for this award. And the Rotarian Madhu on the committee unanimously came up with a suggestion to award this to Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna. And thank you, Madhu, for identifying a well-deserving awardee for this evening. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rotarian Ashok, who has been driving our vocational service, and we walk shoulder to shoulder. And you know, we share a lot of common ideas and goals for the vocational service. Thank you, Ashok. I will not go into the details of PCR's, as he fondly called, credentials and background, which our eminent guest of honor and the citation will be read out. But I would like to briefly say the 59 years in service, called Voice of Madras, multi-talented personality, we are indeed privileged and honored to present this award. We thank you, sir, for accepting this award on behalf of our club, and may your tribe grow, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Before I invite Dr. Gowri Ramnarayan to felicitate Mr. Ramakrishna, let me briefly introduce her to you. Playwright director Dr. Gowri Ramnarayan is a veteran writer and journalist with a lifetime's contribution to Indian performing arts, literature and culture. She served for over a decade as vocal accompanist to the legendary M.S. Subbulakshmi and worked for 22 years between 1989 and 2010 with The Hindu, mainly as a feature writer. She has a PhD in comparative aesthetics from the University of Madras and has been a member of the jury of critics at several international film festivals. Her first play, Dark Horse, won 2 national level Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards in 2007. She has translated 2 plays by the award-winning Marathi dramatist Vijay Tendulkar. In 2005, Dr. Ramnarayan founded Justice Theatre Repertory, whose plays and productions have been staged in major Indian cities. Some of the tallest stars of Carnatic music and Bharatanatyam, such as T.M. Krishna, Vijay Siva, Bombay Shri, and Priyadarshini Govind, have performed in her productions. In September-October 2011, Dr. Ramnarayan presented a series of lectures and workshops on a multi-genre work in theatre at several universities in the United States. Last month, Dark Horse and Other Plays, a compilation of 6 plays written by her between 2004 and 17, was launched by Mr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi in Chennai. Each play raised questions about the role of art today and the responsibility of an artist in a world battered by violence. May now request Dr. Gowri Ramnarayan to felicitate Mr. Ramakrishna.
Thank you. When people introduce me like this, I don't know if it's me or they're talking about somebody else. So, it's wonderful to be here, to be among you on this very happy occasion. And you know when I'm talking why I'm so delighted and so overjoyed. I'd like to begin with a little memory. Last year I invited Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna as a guest speaker to my class of students in theatre at the Asian College of Journalism. At the discussion time the next day, I asked the students what was the most striking thing you found in his lecture. I wasn't at all surprised when everybody burst into oohs and ahs over his, what Mr. Madhu called, stentorian voice. I would call it a reverberant, haunting voice. And his flawless diction. Eventually, after much prodding, they did pick out some of the points that he made, but I think his voice completely floored them. They didn't know that he was one of the pioneers of television and Doordarshan, and that he is the most recorded voice in India, most recorded Indian voice. But they were completely flummoxed, stunned. Finally, one of them observed, I always thought actors were arrogant. But Mr. Ramakrishna came across as a normal person, even a good person. He listened to us, he talked to us as we were equals. Now that is, in essence, this student, in a first-time encounter, understood exactly what Ram is, has been, and ever will be a good human being. Everyone who enters into his orbit will absolutely agree with this. I found out, of course I know P.C. Ramakrishna from the time practically I was born. I mean, as a Madrasi we know, and I've been watching him, you know, his news reading, his performances on television, and of course his wonderful portrayals on the stage. But I really came to know him in a very different way when we started collaborating on producing plays together. I then understood how understanding he can be, how sympathetic he can be. He is what I loved about his support was that he was completely supportive without being intrusive. He gave you complete freedom to do what you want, gave you the freedom to make your own mistakes and find out their mistakes. I think that's a great quality. Ram is always there for every single person in the team. And every single person feels that he is their friend and champion. What a fantastic thing it is to say this about any human being. I've seen Ram sitting down a little apart during the last rehearsal before the show. It's a very vital rehearsal, but taking the time to talk to some youngster and give her or him some acting tips. And then calm down a very nervous actor by patting him or her on the back and saying, "You're fantastic, why are you worried? You're going to floor everyone." And it can also, and then more important for me was that he knew just how to persuade troublemakers into being not troublemakers. And he could solve a director's problem, make the work generally move along, and make every one of us in the team, from the backstage team to the lighting person, to the sound person, to every actor on the stage, young and old, make us all feel good about ourselves. When Ram's around, I always feel, I remember the lines of Browning who said, "God's in his heaven and all's right with the world." So I remember how once, during an all-important tech rehearsal, just the day before the show, a main actor failed to turn up. When this man finally sauntered in, we had all but finished the run-through. That was the only time I saw Ram in a towering rage. I think lack of respect for the art, lack of discipline, lack of commitment, alachiyam, timir, these are the only things that make him angry. I don't know, we have to ask Haima if I'm right. So I don't have to talk about P.C. Ramakrishna's acting skills. I think Sriram is going to talk about it. Through the decades, we have seen him play a myriad different roles, such complex roles, such different, diverse, varied roles. Major and minor characters in plays. And also cameo roles. These cameo roles, you know, the little ones, I mean, people will be alachima irpadapati, chinna apdi vandu poravenu. But he plays them with such assurance and aplomb, you remember that little role. What I most admire in Ram as an actor is that he never upstages any other actor, never makes any other actor feel uncomfortable. Yara tadiki vidra mari inda taanji pidichipar, literally and metaphorically. And I think it's because he has such superb confidence in himself, apart from being a good human being. That confidence makes him want every person to do well, you know. And naturally, if you want your play to be successful, everyone has to do well. On a personal note, and he is totally a stranger to selfishness. On a personal note, I have to say that when I adapted Indira Parthasarathy's novel Swatantra Bhumi into a play in English called Land of the Free, which we co-produced with Madras players, I actually made a drastic shift in the interpretation or even in the adaptation, because I made Indira Parthasarathy's what we call a side character into the major main character, and his hero I made into a less important character. Now, any novelist would have been very upset about that, because a complete shift and transformation in the story, right? But the main reason why I made this shift was that I imagined Ram playing that character whom I center staged, a very suave, urbane, extremely intelligent, very crafty Delhi politician who could speak Oxbridge English and also Hindi. So it was really delightful to watch Ram shape that character. You know, rehearsals are such fun because you see the process. From P.C. Ramakrishna, he turned into Mishra, the politician, every day adding little details. Watching that was to see how an actor develops his role, what craft skills an actor has, and Ram, really, it was a treat to watch him do that. And I think Indra Prasad came to see the play, and he approved of the change. And I think largely or mainly because he was entranced by Ram's interpretation of that character. Ram has recently turned director as well. Something he has done with absolute finesse. Those of you who have seen Tanneer Tanneer will know what I mean. Those of you who have not seen it are unfortunate. But do you know that he has another extraordinary talent, which he has not, which he has not really invested in or worked upon, as I would wish him to do. He's a fantastic writer. He's got a terrific tongue-in-cheek humor, a way with words, a flow, and most importantly, a very, very impish humor. I want to read one paragraph. Sriram was asking me, are you going to read the whole book? But I'm just going to read one paragraph. And maybe two paragraphs, because both of them are about two persons whom I knew very well. Ambi Harsha. Ambi Harsha was an actor. Someone, yes, I see someone nodding, yes. He was a very prominent name on the Indian theatre scene here. And so this is a book that Ram wrote. Please read it if you can. Bring Down the House Lights, which he published the year, on the 50th year of Madras Players. I'm going to read from the book. Ambi was the reason why we stopped selling tickets for the first 2 rows in museum theatre. His speech was accompanied by generous jet streams of saliva, and people had started to bring umbrellas to the front seats. Actors in proximity to him, however, had no means of escape. We learned to stoically accept the liberal spray lining our faces as Ambi earnestly went about the standard routine. The broader the comedy, the wetter Ambi's speech became, and local wits dubbed it Ambi Varsha. Needless to say, love scenes were a definite no-no for Ambi. The other is about a classmate of mine. And I can't believe that PC could so totally capture his spirit, you know. He was a classmate called Salim Ghaus. I'm so tempted to read the whole thing, but I shall restrain myself and read only one paragraph. Salim was Madras's Marlon Brando, the method actor, brooding, solitary, fiercely introspective. His voice was a deep growl with the graininess of sand in a tin container. We were in Durand-Matt's The Marriage of Mr. Mississippi together. Salim finishes a scene with me and exits. I have a bit more to do before my own exit. As I walk into the wings, I find friend Salim wrapped around a pillar, crying copiously, with the crew clucking in chorus about him. Imagine our utter surprise when he announces between heaving sobs, "Yaar, I was so good! I was so good!" Modesty was not one of Salim's sterling virtues, and he never hesitated to declare that he was the best. Then Ram loses touch with Salim because Salim moves to Bombay. I run into Salim once again in an airport, complete with heavy dark glasses and a baseball cap. A tap on the shoulder and he turns, as dramatically as he has ever done on the stage. The polite but superior smile is already in place. The growl is very evident as we exchange inanities. Soon it's time for us to go our different directions, perhaps to meet again in the next decade. As I walk to my flight, I cannot help thinking that Salim, right now, is probably clasping the potted plants in the airport lobby, with tears streaming down his shades, saying to himself in well-rehearsed stage whisper, "Yaar, I was so good. I was so good." Don't you think he should write more? Yeah. He can beat us all at our own game. Many actors are satisfied with acting, not Ram. He felt a sense of responsibility towards making a contribution to theatre, and Chennai theatre in particular. And he did it in a very special, very meaningful and a very thoughtful way. As the president of the Madras Players, he dared to make many changes, evolve a radical new policy. Madras Players was well known for staging Western plays from Shakespeare to Eliot. Even their translations were from other European languages, Russian or French or German. There were some translations by Girish Karnad and Vijay Tendulkar and Badal Sarkar, which were staged in the past, but they were few and far between, and they were also very well established international stars. But Ram adopted a very inclusive approach, choosing Indian playwrights writing in English or plays translated from other Indian languages into English, because this is English theatre after all. And soon he decided that Madras writers would be center staged. This is absolutely wonderful and extremely heartwarming, especially as we in Madras, we Tamils, have a tendency to underplay our own achievers and overlook our own achievers. Madras writers are mostly the last to be recognized in Madras, and they are recognized in Madras if they are recognized outside Madras. So now, thanks to Ram, many of us have reached an audience. Also, thanks to P.C. Ram, the oldest amateur English theatre in India collaborates now with very young groups, even newcomers. His trust in young talent makes him opt for young directors as well, which is a very daring step, mind you. He makes an effort to reach young audiences as well by having special matinees for school children. As an aside, I may add that he also finds the time, makes the effort to read to visually challenged people. But I will end by reminding you that Ram is also a musician. I must say this, that young people always cluster around him wherever he goes. I think that is a very special quality that Ram has, which I appreciate. So yes, I am coming back to the end, reminding you that Ram is also a musician, a disciple of the redoubtable, forbidding, formidable Palghat Mani Iyer, and he has played the mridangam as an artist on the stage in his early years. But he makes another kind of music too, being the kind of person he is, so open-minded, with the kind of exposure he has had to the world and the way he keeps his mind open. This other kind of music makes him part of the Madras Youth Choir. I think the average age is about 70? Okay, all right. Anyway, but they're youthful in spirit. I love the name. Okay, Madras Youth Choir, who recently did a very triumphant tour of the US. Those who have not heard him sing can well imagine the haunting impact of his magisterial voice raised in song. May I say that I am absolutely delighted to be here today once again, as I believe, and as I know that all of you believe too, that the Rotary Club of Madras South could not have found a better person to honor with a Distinguished Service Award than our own P.C. Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna's life has been and will always be, I think, a determined pursuit of excellence with discipline, integrity, commitment, honesty, dedication, and finally, grand passion. P.C. Ramakrishna, we salute you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gowri Ramnarayan, for sharing those wonderful anecdotes, your personal experiences with Mr. Ramakrishna. Our next speaker, Mr. V. Sriram. In fact, I have a very formal introduction of Sriram over here, but he's glaring at me and he's already made a request that he should not be formally introduced in his own home club. In fact, I thought it would be very appropriate to introduce Sriram because we don't seldom see him in our regular meetings. I think it's time our members knew about your... Anyway, over to Sriram.
Thank you, Seshadri. I guess I saw that coming. put my foot right in. Gowri, I think, has said a lot that, I also knew about Ram, but it's something that fills me with delight. And when Madhu called me a few days ago and said that we are going to achieve this award to Ram, you must also come and speak, I said, of course I will, because Ram is a person whom I greatly respect and hold in the highest regard, as I do Haimang, his gracious wife, who is in the audience. I have not worked as closely as Gowri has with Ram, but he did, he was one of the key people in the staging of one of my books, The Devadasi and the Saint, which was done as a play by Prasanna Ramaswamy. But I'll start with much earlier, because my earliest memory of Ram is the play Sakharam Binder. I think I must have been, I must have been 10 or less when I was taken to the staging of that play, and all of us came back talking about this voice and this unique voice that, and then I remember during the emergency or just before that, we had Indus Valley to Indira Gandhi, this documentary that was made by Babu Krishna Swami, that also had PCR's voice. And then, I went to Calcutta, so the only time, I used to read the Friday reviews very religiously, and that's a few plays used to get written about in it, and I used to know. But my, the next big find was, this was 1970s, and then now in 1989, I joined this advertising agency in Bombay called Lintas. And then, we used to have a lot of these ad films being made, voiceovers, because this was not the multiple channel internet era. We were still at the fag end of Doordarshan's greatness, and I think Star TV had just come in, and color films used to be made, and lots of radio advertising used to take place. Lots of radio advertising. And I remember that they used to have lists of voices from various cities. But in Madras, there would be only one name. That would be P.C. Ramakrishna's name, and no other name. And I used to think, wow, 75, I remember this voice, and now it's still there. And I still very vividly remember that for some of the more important clients that we had, like Levers and all that, Alik Padunsi, the great, he himself would sit in on meetings that we would have to discuss ad campaigns. I was one little trainee, but I would be in the back end. And Alik was known as God, as you know, and his secretary was Miss Pope. It's a very strange coincidence that God had a secretary called Pope in that company. And so he would come, and then in the middle of the meeting, he would have a rowing boat in which he would sit and row, then get back into the seat. It was all very disconcerting. But when you grew older in advertising, you realize that that's the way advertising agencies worked. And he would trash everything that everybody gave. And lots of F words used to be thrown at all of us, and many of us would be terrified. So there was this particular meeting where every suggestion had been thrown out of the window, voices had been criticized, all that had happened. Then when it came to Madras, we were just trembling, and then because there was only one name in the list, and Alec himself says, I suppose it is P.C. Ramakrishna. And then somebody at the back said, yes, very well. And then we went on to the rest of the meeting. We never had any discussion. So this was how I got to know about Ram's greatness, the fact that he had remained the voice. And we used to have this joke that just as Elizabeth Taylor had insured her violet eyes, Ram should have insured his voice. But I'm sure it doesn't need it. It's been going on for years and years. Then, having come to Madras, I got to see Ram in several plays, and I've been a regular in the audience in several of the plays that he has staged between, say, 1993 and now. I think I would not have missed many of his stagings. The last one that I saw was Chudamani, the writer of Chudamani's dramatic adaptation of Chudamani's writings by Nikhila Kesavan, in which Ram played a very important role. And I worked very closely with him when Prasanna produced the Devadasi and the Saint. And you see, this is a country where, even though today, lots of things are opening up, in the sense that children today have several professions that you and I did not have. When we were growing up, we had to become engineers, doctors, chartered accountants, and even if our parents understood that we had other ambitions, our aunts and uncles never understood it, and that mattered a lot more. In the maths, Center Mangalia and all those, I wish he'll marine on all those uncles. But anyway, the point is, Ram dared to stand out. And I think that is what really makes him great. When you read his book, you realize how much of a struggle it was to keep theatre standing and alive. See, this is not a country where, I mean, we talk about the fact that we are very creative, we are very pro-art and all that, but just try and get one sponsor for a play and try to make a small surplus on a play. It will never happen. Never ever happen. It is maddening. I mean, and I am amazed at the way that people like him have stood that test and continue to do so. Gowri spoke about passion. I know about how much Gowri struggles with all the writing that Gowri does, and it is just not easy, because the moment you approach somebody for a sponsorship, they'll tell you about Polonius' speech to Laertes, then they'll tell you about how the environment is doing badly, demonetization, recession, and everything else under the sun will be quoted, and they don't think that theatre is something that is worth sponsoring at all. And it's only, I wished all those people who don't go to see plays come and see some of the plays that Madras players put together, to see how much of a life-changing experience it can be. When you sit through it, the lessons that some of those plays, and many of the plays are extremely serious plays with a lot, it's not something that's frivolous or anything. Every one of them has got a certain motive in them, and they talk about several things. So I have always found that, these plays are greatly educational experiences, but for the people who produce them, it's exceedingly frustrating. And I think that it is only the passion for theatre that has kept people like Ram going for it. And that is truly amazing, because this is a kind of this is a profession, I wouldn't even call it a profession, I would only say that it's a passion, where you are judged only by your last performance. And only by the last staging of the play, not anything other than that. You know, you can be P.C. Ramakrishna, you can be an outstanding theatre artist. The last time you go there and something, that kind of thing. And that is really the worst of it. It's the fact that people never look back at earlier things, they only look at the last staging. And when you are on stage, people like P.C. cannot say what we all do when we go to office. Today I am not going to answer to any emails because I am not feeling up to it. When you are on stage, you can't do that. You have to give your best. And they all go through the same driving of the traffic that we drive through, the same rain, the bad motorists who come along with us. They carry all the problems that we carry. But when they get onto stage, they are completely transformed and they become different people altogether. I think that is really Ram. That he has embodied that spirit of theatre in Madras, he has carried it forward. He has given, as Gowri said, encouragement to thousands of, maybe thousands is an exaggeration, hundreds of other people who have aspired to get into theatre. The other thing about Madras players, and particularly Ram, is that these are all very dignified plays, if I may say so. I mean, they are not out to hurt people's sensibilities or, indulge in unnecessary profanities and all that in order to... They don't cater to the gallery. These are all plays that are serious works of art. And I have also noticed that even when they take plays from other languages or not necessarily a novel or a story which they have converted into a play, but when they take a play, there is a lot of their own interpretation and study. It is not just a blind staging, if I may use that phrase, of what a playwright has already thought about. Gowri already mentioned that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about Ram is that off stage Ram is a very different personality. And Ram is also full of anecdote about Carnatic musicians. This is something that I truly enjoyed. And I'll never forget his story about Ariyakudi Ramanujayengar sitting in the family swing, and after a magnificent concert where the whole family has enjoyed it, then he comes home and insists that everybody listen to his mistress sing a song. And the mistress is a very indifferent singer. Everybody is squirming in their seats, but Ramanujayengar is telling Ram's father, Ram's stories are just hilarious on the world of Carnatic music. I think one day you must sit and write that all down, Ram. I'm sure it will be as good as that. Bring down the house lights. I think we must have a session one day with you on stories from Carnatic music. Ram's writing, I was lucky enough to experience even before this book came out, because Madras Musings was looking for a story on Cathedral Road. And Ram grew up in Cathedral Road. His grandfather, Captain Krishnaswamy, I think owned half of Cathedral Road at one time. So Ram gave us a delightful article, which even now I chuckle over. The fact that, we keep talking about palatial bungalows, but Ram's story had this line about how scary it was to live in a bungalow there, with only the botanical gardens on one side, and on stormy nights, only the trees waving up and down to keep you company. It gave a very different picture about the road in a different period. So Ram hears lots more plays, I'm sure, and lots more acting. And I'm so happy that our club kind of decided to give you this award. This award is, I think we are just honoring ourselves by giving this award to you. And thank you so much for all the plays that you have staged and for all the happiness that you have brought to us who come and watch your plays. Thank you once. Thank
you. Thank you very much, Sriram. In fact, when Sriram was talking about his advertising days, I was myself reminded about my days in advertising. I myself come from the advertising profession, having spent about four decades in that business. And I was probably one generation ahead of Sriram. I started my career in the late 70s in Bombay. And at that time, as he said, we were doing a lot of audiovisuals. There were only two voices that we were aware of. In Bombay, it was the late Pratap Sharma. And when it came to South, it was Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna. In fact, after I moved to Chennai about 3 decades ago, I realized that you were the gold standard for a voice. If we were to use any other voice, the client would listen to the voice, which is, sorry, better get Mr. PCR here. So I now, in fact, we move into the main part of our function. I request Madhu to read the citation for Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna. Over to Madhu.
This is the most embarrassing part of it all.
Thanks, Gowri and Sriram, for those brilliant and evocative appraisals of P.C. Ramakrishna. I've been an admirer of his for a long time. In fact, I considered Richard Burton was considered the greatest voice of the English language. And when I first heard P.C. Ramakrishna, I said he's India's Richard Burton, and he still is. I'll just read out a brief citation on P.C. Ramakrishna. It is brief because of mundane reasons, because the plaque on which it's engraved, it can't be long. Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna is a voice and theatre icon. The voice of Madras is one of the most recorded English language voices in India. He has been a voiceover professional for more than 30 years. His stentorian voice is heard in documentaries, corporate films, children's talking books, heritage and tourism presentations. PCR is also one of Chennai's most respected and charismatic theatre professionals. He has been a member of Madras Players, the oldest English language theatre group in India, for 59 years. He has acted in more than 100 plays. He was the president of Madras Players for 2 decades, guiding its focus toward Indian writing. He has conducted workshops on theatre techniques for schools and colleges. PCR says that excellence in voice presentations is a matter of 60% voice and 40% feeling. He himself is the best exemplar of this formula. He says people who aspire for excellence should seek to ignite the fire within, the fire of passion. Excellence is within you, just as fragrance is within a flower. The Rotary Club of Madras South is privileged to present Mr. P.C. Ramakrishna with the Distinguished Service Award in recognition of his services as a pioneer of theatre and as a communications professional.
Thank you, sir.
Just a minute. Will it take a minute? Okay. Sir, thank you. No, no, it's okay. She should. It's okay.
Thank you.
Just a moment. May I now request PDG Ramakrishna Raja to present the special memento to Mr. Ramakrishna.
Thank you, sir.
நீங்க வாங்க ப்ளீஸ்
Yeah, that's better. You can bring it in here. Yeah. Shri. Bring it in. Shot. Covering everybody.
Well, we now move into a very important part of today's event, a part which you've all been waiting for, to hear that legendary voice. May now request Mr. Ramakrishna to give his acceptance speech.
Thank you, Rotarian President. Thank you, Mr. Madhu. Thank you, Gowri, Sriram, for such nice words that you've said about me. It's a particular honor for me not only to receive the commendation and award of the Rotary Club of Madras South, where I have many friends, but also to be felicitated by two people whose work I admire very greatly. Gowri and I go back a long way. As she has already said, our families knew each other and we have common interests in music and later in theatre. Gowri did one thing for the Madras players for which Madras players has to be extremely thankful. Whilst we were searching for avenues to bring Indian writing, particularly South Indian writing, into the English fold, she came forward with an extra dimension. She helped us in a collaboration which extended over a few plays to bring in music and dance to theatre. I mean, they're all performing arts. So when music and dance came together, in our first play, what her own grandfather's short story, which she converted as a play called Rural Fantasy, Kanayari in Kanavu, which was made into rural fantasy. She had, at that time, had T.M. Krishna sing with his wife Sangeeta, Amrita Murali play the violin, Arun Prakash play the mridangam, along with the play that was happening on stage, choreographed by her. And it was a new experience not only for the Madras players, but for the Madras audience. I keep saying Madras. I like to refer to this as Madras. I very rarely refer to it as Chennai. Madras has a sense of history, which I'm sure Sriram will agree with. which I'm loath to discard. So Gowri's contribution to us is immeasurable in that way. What she has done for us in theatre, very few people can do, because she is the Gary Sobers, so to speak, of the performing arts. 4-in-1. Gary Sobers was always known as the 4-in-1 cricketer. She straddles the arts of music, dance, drama, and direction. Not to mention writing. She's one better than Gary Sobers that way. So she brought all those influences into theatre, and whilst we ourselves cannot continue with all that, we have lived with it, and it has enriched us. It has made us different. We have brought to the audiences plays which otherwise no other group would do. In fact, I remember T.M. Krishna singing live and enjoying every moment of that play, saying, you know something, I haven't seen 40% of this audience ever. This is fantastic. So I said, I haven't seen 60% of this audience. They have come to listen to you. So it was a very happy marriage of both music, dance and drama. And thank you, Gowri, for making it possible for us. Of course, Gowri has gone on to do several things which are path-breaking thereafter. Sriram, of course, as a speaker, as a historian, as a heritage activist, I mean, there's very little I can bring to this club that you do not know about. I have been a great admirer. When he speaks, let's say in Tag Center, about MS Subbulakshmi or whatever, there is no seating room and people are perched like monkeys up there on the rafters. Such is the power of his presentation, which is a combination of very hard homework and beautiful presentation. Nothing happens without homework. You can't just be flashy and do what you have. You have to prepare. And that preparation is so evident in the work that Sriram does that it shows. Added to which, of course, he's got the gift of speech, and just people lap it up, and his heritage walks. And I don't need to tell you about Sriram. I have been a great admirer of Sriram's work and his contribution to not only his heritage and history of Madras, but to music and to the performing arts. Thank you very much, Sriram, for associating yourself and saying such nice things about me. Now, what can I tell you that, no, you've listened enough about theatre, and I don't think I need to talk about theatre here. I will share with you, though, something about which very few of you know, what I do. Quite often, a person comes to me and says, "Sir, neenga enna seiringa?" Then it becomes very difficult to answer that question. And I said, "Na, voice professional." Dubbing pandringla. Then I said, "Illa, dubbing pandradilla." Then their face falls, dejection. They haven't got it. Then for momentary spark, "Oh, radio, television, neenga pesuradhu kekkalam illaya?" Adum avlava kekka mudiyadhu. Finish, they give up. It's very difficult for me to explain what it is that I do. What is a voice professional? T.S. Parthasarathi, the music, what was he called? He was the, the expert on music. There is a word.
He was a historian.
Historian, music historian, yes. From the early days, always addressed me as, "Inapa ashariri ondutiya." He disembodied me in one stroke. And to the last of his days, every time he met me, he said, "Na ashariri eppadi irukka?" I think towards the last, he forgot my name. I just was ashariri to him. But that is what I do. I read scripts that other people write on corporates, there were children's books, on various things, heritage, tourism. And people say, "Enga sir kekala neenga pesuradhu?" It's very difficult for me to say. It's for a very specific niche target audience. It's a job that needs done, and I do it. It's a corporate executives who gets to hear. If children are listening to talking books, they get to hear. If somebody in France is to be told, come to sunny India, he hears. So it's a very niche audience, and very few people really understand the kind of work I do. So when I retired early, with 10 years of service left from a corporate existence in 1993, it was very traumatic for my wife, I'm sure, and my family. I had no idea where I was going to bring home the bacon from. They had no idea, and I had no way to convince them that my last take-home pay would be protected. It's a matter of trust for which I'm eternally grateful to her and my family, that they took me on trust at that time, and I hope I have not failed in that trust. It's become a field that's grown every day. Everybody who wants to say something is making a film. Nobody picks up a microphone and talks anymore. They make a film. And somebody has to read it. Whether it's a film about temples or a film about tire dealers and tires. Somebody has to read it. Now, why are there not so many people? You mentioned, there are not so many people in my profession. There are a couple of people in Bombay. There's just about me here. And it's been like that for 35 years. It's not as if we are standing in anybody's way. I have introduced myself, I must tell you, at least 15 to 16 tremendously good voices from the world of theatre for this. And I have sent them to studios and I've told them, record yourself, get into a voice bank. They must be looking for new voices. They must get tired of these old voices. Not a single person, I'm sorry to say, has made the grade. Because you must know why. It's a very lonely kind of occupation. You are there before a microphone. Sometimes the client comes, most often the client doesn't. There is a recordist on the other side of the glass who sets the thing and goes to have a smoke. And you're left reading a script and interpreting it for an audience that you cannot see. It's a very lonely occupation. It's also an occupation that uses an instrument which is unforgiving, the microphone. The high-end microphones that are used in studios, I say all this because many of you may not be aware of what this profession actually does. Many of the high-end microphones, or most of them at any rate in these studios, Neumanns or AKGs, the minimum cost would be about $1,75,000, the microphone alone. So they pick out everything that is wonderful in your voice. But unfortunately, they're not selective. It's like chemotherapy. It kills all the cancer cells. It also makes the hair fall out. So it's not just that if you're good with what you do, you must be friendly. You must have a running love affair with the microphone, at least in the studio. If you don't, all extraneous sounds come in, breath sounds and lip sounds and all those things. And the editor tears his hair trying to make sense of what you're doing. Also, a lot of people think it's a very exciting profession. It is, for me. Whether I'm talking to an MRF tire dealer, or whether I'm talking about turbines and transmission towers, or whether I'm talking about come to sunny Kerala, I'm excited. If I am not excited about what I read, how will the person on the other side be interested? A tire dealer wants to know how good a tire is. An engineer wants to know how a particular new turbine or a heat exchanger works. A tourist, of course, wants to know what's good about Kerala or Karnataka or Kashmir. I must have that person in mind. Many people who have got good voices and want to come to this profession say, I'll read only exciting stuff, all this. 90% of the work that I do is dull as ditch water. I read a 45-page script some time ago on how to overhaul an MF-35 tractor. What is exciting about it? Not to me. I'm not even an engineer. But I realized at that time there is somebody sitting on the other end of the scale who's looking to do this job hearing me. And if he thinks I'm bored, it's of no use. Also, that is also why many people don't come. They don't want to read, they only want to read exciting stuff. It's ultimately, they say, well, how did you get into it? The only answer I have is I was fascinated by the sound of the spoken word in any language. There are some who are good runners, there are some who For me, it was the spoken word that jumped up at me and excited me, filled me with passion. And fortunately, I studied in Calcutta, where in a Jesuit institution where all the priests were either French or Belgian, Irish, who were so passionate about their own work that they picked out students for special abilities. I remember being picked up in school during Father's Day or Rector's Day or Principal's Day. The priest would write to me, write a thing, "Dear Reverend Father Rector, this is your day, we the students of St. Xavier's College, etc., etc., and put me on stage, rehearse me and put me on stage to read it. And I remember being mildly irritated. Why is this guy wanting me to do that? I'd rather sit in the audience with my friends and enjoy myself. But somehow at that time, this Belgian priest had realized that I was more interested in the spoken word than the next student. 40 years afterwards, the work that I do is that. It is his understanding of where my passion lay that today is making a profession for me. And I never thought this was a profession. When I was reading news in Doordarshan, I never thought this was a profession. Till 1976, somebody in a studio called me and said, I have a script for you to read. Will you come? So I went to the studio. This was a studio called Sound and Sight of Gandhi's studio, it was called. Gandhi, who was a sound recordist for the great Gemini film Chandralekha. Oh, yes. He had retired from there and had started a studio. He was my mentor and guru as far as all recordings were concerned. He recorded me for my first script, which was a corporate script for BHEL, 1976. And all of BHEL's scripts from then, because there's a public sector company, and they'd got the permission already to use my voice, so they never went to get anybody else's permission for any other voice. So from then, whether it is BHL Ramachandrapuram or Gopal or the Trichy or Hrishikesh, BHEL, if you take a BHEL script, you'll have my voice. So one public sector company led to another, it was HAL and then BHPV and one thing led to another. And most of the South Indian companies. And then they found that Bombay was out of bounds. He talked about Alik Padamsee. There were people from Bombay coming. I've heard this Alik Padamsee story too, with some exaggeration of course. But still, the Lintas and the Walter Thompson people used to come from Bombay to record. Bombay, we had this big daddy of them all, Pratap Sharma, from whom we have learnt everything. There was Pratap Sharma, Zul Velani, Bakri Hill. They're no more. All of them have died. They've been replaced by just two people. Just there are two there and one. This profession has always had this paucity of people doing this work. Anyway, so that's what happened, and Bombay became out of bounds because everything in Bombay is 3 times costlier than Chennai. Chennai, suddenly people found from Bangalore up to Hyderabad that coming to Chennai and getting things done was cheaper, 3 times cheaper than going to Bombay. And you could get a script there, come in the morning, get a script and get back in the evening. Now even that doesn't happen, they send it by email. I keep telling you, you can't trust a man that much. You should at least come. It's all right. It's become that blasé. So it's that. So Hyderabad, Bangalore, Trivandrum, Ahmedabad is coming to Chennai. Talking of Ahmedabad, sometimes the work that I do fills me with pride because I work with some things that have made India proud. All the ISRO work I do. I have done all the scripts for ISRO's Chandrayaan-1 From the time the first thing was assembled in Trivandrum, Bangalore, another place, then taken and launched, till the time Chandrayaan-1 landed on the moon. Every one of those scripts, they have made it for record, I have voiced, as also for Mangalyaan. So my peripheral participation in national effort fills me with pride. I am associated. I have never seen anybody in ISRO. They've never come. They've never come. It's like they come, they say, "Bhejta hu sahab, aap padh lijiye." I said, "Come on, let me at least see you. I mean, I've been speaking to you for 10 years. I haven't seen you." So, ISRO's work, which is path-breaking, and now the latest 104 satellites being launched, also I have done. Now, I come back home and say, I feel, however peripheral, I have participated in a national endeavor. Fills me with pride for the name, because of about the nation. I have done work, for instance, with the Mysore Institute of Languages. That is another thing that excites me. Languages, words, pronunciation. Very few people in my profession are happy pronouncing words like Tirumuruga Trippadai and other things. Whereas for me, it's like, as he said, halwa. I love the compound phonetics of such words. And you read a medical script. I read a script for an ENT surgeon some time ago. It had 50 times the word sphenoethmoidectomy. I can't imagine anybody else having the patience to read it. But sphenoethmoidectomy filled me with, oh, and it's not such a pleasant operation either. But it was sphenoethmoidectomy, which, in case you do not know, is a non-invasive procedure through the nostril to remove a cyst in the brain. Yes, right. It's that kind of thing. So so there are, you must be able to do that. And in the process, I've done a tremendously interesting work for Buddhist excavations in Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh has a lot of Buddhist excavation. I've done things for Golconda tourism. I've done all of Kerala tourism. That is exciting in its own way. So when you talk about voice, I would like to say the power of the word Om. All sound has come from the word Om. It's not necessarily a religious thing. It's A, U and M. That's how you write it. A-U-M. It's from the Nabhi, which is the abdomen, the dacket, up through the lungs, hitting the sinuses and coming out. Om. And all of phonetics revolves around that word of Om. The voice is nature's greatest instrument. No single instrument can replicate the range of the human voice. The flute can be melancholy, the guitar can be lively, the violin can be lyrical. But it's the voice that can run the Navarasa range from Sringara to Bhayanaka to Bibhatsa to Shanta and Karunya. And how we neglect it. How our singers neglect it. You think of M.S. Subbulakshmi, the legend. What do you think of when the name M.S. Subbulakshmi comes to you? What do you think? The voice. Everything else is afterwards. It's the voice. When somebody talks to you about Muhammad Rafi, what do you think about? Voice. It's like Badam Alwa, voice. After that is his versatility, whether he's singing for Shammi Kapoor or whether he's singing for Rajendra Kumar or whatever it is versatility. Similarly with M.S. Amma, whether she's singing Shyama Shastri or whether she's singing Tyagaraja, it's the voice that is God-given. If, for instance, she did not have a voice, I really would like Gowri to tell us whether, she would have achieved as much as she did. She probably might have, but it's a voice that came. She's a nightingale. Everybody says she's a nightingale. So a lot of our musicians, and this is something that Sriram I'm sure knows also, marvelous singers, great scholarship, maybe in different voices. the voice is a great vehicle. And I think the emotion that the voice can give, from saying, come to sunny Goa, it's beautiful under the sun, saying, once upon a time, there was a little girl. If you can run that range between one thing and another, and ultimately also say the nature was beautiful, the flowers were in bloom, the sun was shining, and the birds were chirping, but for Vijay, it meant nothing. Because Vijay couldn't see. He was blind. There are three variations of what a voice can do over a microphone, or should do over a microphone, that conveys the emotion to the person there. I thought I would share with you just this aspect of my work, the voice. It's wonderful to be called the voice of this or voice of that. Yes, the voice is important. You have a voice, use it. And I was told by the good, great singers from the West and here, everybody has a nice voice. Find your range. Even singers, some sing at 1, some sing at 2, some sing at 3, women sing at 5 and 6. It doesn't matter at what Shruti you sing. So long as you can run the 2.5 octaves with your voice, you are a good singer. You are trying to explore the range of music. And finally, I will end by saying, use your voice honestly, effectively, metaphorically and physically. And I remember the 4-way test. Use your voice on the template of, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? It's a Rotary 4-way test which has stood the test of time. Any activity, more so the voice. If you're honest with your voice, if your voice tells you what you are, and if your voice conveys an honesty of thought, idea, and emotion, then you will be believed. The voice is very important. Everybody has a nice voice. Use it judiciously. Thank you very much, Rotary Club. Thank you, Gowri and Sriram, again for saying such wonderful things about me. I do hope I would have deserved some part of that. Thank you, Rotary President. Thank you, Sri Madhu. Thank you all for honoring me this evening. It's been a great pleasure to come to the Rotary Club of Madras. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna. Okay, couple of questions, Madhu says, and before that I must say that we're all Rotarians here, but I can assure you there are just a handful of Rotarians who can recite that 4-way test by heart like you did. And also this, okay, I think we'll first take the questions from the audience before.
One question is, what do you do if you read out a script? Suppose you receive a script that's badly written, what do you do? I mean...
It's a very good question. Many scripts are badly written. Now, if I were to refuse to read those scripts, I wouldn't be reading many. So long as idiomatically, syntactically, they are correct, I will read them. If I need to make any corrections, if the client is there, I will request them to make it. If he's not there, I'll go on the phone and say that doesn't make sense. Quite often they agree to what I do. Yes, good scripts are very difficult to come by. I would like to read a script, for instance, if Sriram and Gowri write. But where one is not so fortunate most of the time. But yes, ultimately, whatever you have, you must give life to it. You must think about the person who's going to listen to it. He is important. So, That's the only answer I can give.
Do you need any special training? Is there any special training that one can get to?
I didn't have any. Genetically, I think I was a little lucky in the sense that most of my family had halfway decent voices, though none of them did what I do. It's also lucky for a man at the very crucial time of the teens for the voice to break evenly. Singers too. Many singers I know who sing like angels till they are 12, we are unable to hear them after 14 because their voice is broken wrongly. I can name many. I've been listening to a lot of music. Similarly, people who use their voices one way or the other, they need to be lucky with the break when the voice breaks. If they're lucky enough to have the voice broken evenly, well, they can do what they do. If they're not lucky, well, okay. But if you are in a profession which requires, even if you're a man, if you're a male, requires the voice to be broken, you have to, like I know Lalgudi Jayaraman, the violin maestro, telling one of his disciples, who was at that age, ஒரு வருஷம் பாடாதா இந்த சாரீரம் வந்து கண்ணாடி மாதிரி அது அது இப்படி வந்தா ஜார் ஆயிடும் ஷேட்டர் பண்ணும் ஒரு வருஷம் ஸ்டெடி ஆயிக்கும் ஒரு வருஷத்துக்கு அப்புறம் பாடு இப்போ பாடாத he didn't listen to him and he's regretted it in my opinion.
How do you maintain your voice?
If you ask SP Balasubramaniam, he will say, I do this, I do everything, and nothing happens to my voice. He's lucky. But not all are that lucky. I think for each, you have to find your thing. Like I take only room temperature liquids. I don't have ice cream. Of course, it helps that I don't like ice cream. I don't drink traumatic fluids, like very hot, very cold, or very spicy food, which also I don't like. Also, the greatest attribute to a good voice is silence. If you practice half an hour in a day, even all of you may not use your voices for that purpose. I identify a half an hour in a day when you will be totally silent. When you're silent, I don't mean the passive silence. I mean active, aware silence. Be silent, aware of everything around you. You'll find you're hearing more bird sounds, you're hearing ambient sounds. That half an hour of silence will rejuvenate the voice like nothing else. Silence is, I believe, the greatest rejuvenator. I practice a lot of silence. My wife complains that I hardly talk at home. I have to convince her that I talk so much outside that this is probably the only time I don't need to talk. But anyway, that's silence is gold. That's why they say silence is golden, and it's active, neutral silence.
I would like to say you get a God-given voice, but I'm sure there are other things that go into it. Pronunciation. How hard did you work on pronunciation? One thing, and the second part is accent. You have got an accent which is neutral. There'll be a lot of talk about Madrasi accent, Hyderabadi accent, Bengali accent, Karnataka accent, and so on. I mean, there's no offense to anyone in the audience. But how did you manage that accent?
This is a very good question. In my kind of work, you cannot sound American, and you can't sound excessively British. I mean, British is the way we're brought up, we've been taught. By experience, I believe that most of the world now responds, because much of the work, except for America, much of the work goes to the Middle East, Australia, it's all acceptable. We call neutral, unaccented English. This is very important. Neutral, that is, you cannot identify it being Lancashire or Manchester or this or that. It's neutral, which means that the accent should be neutral, the pronunciation should be neutral. The words of each language should be pronounced accurately. And in this profession, this is a problem. When you're speaking English, obviously I'm speaking about a lot of Indian things. The other day I was talk about the 6 Muruga temples in Tamil Nadu, the Arvadai Vudu. So you talk about Muruga and as I said, Tirumuruga, Trippadayano. While you're speaking English, you've got to hit those words. And they can't sound Anglican. They have to sound Indian. And because you are a professional, you have a responsibility, I think, to know the exact pronunciation of the words. I, for instance, know it is Varanasi. It is not Varanasi. You will get by with Varanasi, but it is not. If you hear Muthuswami Dikshita's Kriti, Vishwanadam Bhajeham, the Pallavi says, Pallavi says Varanasi. If you read Premchand's Seva Sadan in Hindi, the first line is Varanasi mein ye hua tha. Varanasi. Because I read a lot of things for Andhra, I know it is Varangal and not Varangal. It is from Urukal. Because the Andhra man sat there and explained to me, I said Varangal. He said, no, sir, no, it is. Then he said Urukal, it got sort of bastardized, so to speak, it became Varangal. So words like that, it's important for me. If I read a tourism script, Kerala is a big problem because, you know, much of the words are swallowed there. So it's to know exactly Karnataka, how these words are pronounced, it's a challenge. It's a challenge that fires me. It's a challenge. If I don't know it, I will go and ask. I will ask. It's important for me to know. And somebody who's a Kannadiga or a Malayali or a Kashmiri, if he hears that and he says, he said it correctly, it's enough for me. Per contra, if I say something because everybody passes and one person in the audience will get up and say, that is a reputation which is important to me. So yes, to answer that question, you have to work at it, as you have to work at your job, at any job, as his job. He can't take anybody down Georgetown in a heritage store unless he knows every door there. It's all homework. And that is why he is so popular, Sriram. If he doesn't do that homework, what can he do? It's the same homework that all of us have to do. So accents are neutralized. In places, names, and particularly if they are foreign names, Indian names, you've got to know exactly. If you're reading a medical script, you can say, you can't say ophthalmology. Whereas it's okay when we talk to each other, you have to say ophthalmology. See, these are, or is SPECTROMETER. 9 times out of 10, you would say spectrometer. But when you read a script, it's important for me to say spectrometer, like thermometer. It's photograph and photography. It doesn't become photography. So similarly, spectrograph and spectrography, spectrometer. So these are little things that are important when you see a script. I'm just giving you some off-the-shoulder examples. Important for me, because I read the script. May not be important to you. But when you hear a word like that, spectrometer, you will sit up and say, has he made a mistake? Then hopefully you'll go back to the dictionary and the dictionary will tell you it is spectrometer. And then I've scored a point there. So it's that, it's important.
Thank you very much, sir. If you have any more questions, you can meet it personally. And I wish I'd heard this before I started my work. I've done my homework and checked up a few words. I've now become very conscious of what I've said. Okay, we've been hearing his voice in audio visuals over the years, but I think we've been privileged that for the first time we heard the story behind that voice. Thank you very much, sir. Now we have a very pleasant task to do. May I request our Secretary, MC Shrikant, to present a memento to Dr. Gowri? Oh, okay. May I request Rotary Ashok, I hope he's here, to present a memento to Sriram. And Ashok can be right here to propose a word of thanks.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's a wrong man. With PCC around my ear. My voice can't be heard in the last row. Sir, it gives an immense pleasure to be here to propose the vote of thanks. I have seen you, watch you on the TV those days in Doordarshan. When I came here, I was little, took back to my old memories. I'm very thankful to you, sir, and I congratulate you for taking this award. Actually, it's an honor for us to give this award to you. And, as a young boy, we have seen you, at least me. Thank you very much. And I thank Mrs. Ramakrishna who have been here. Thank you, madam. It's very kind of you. I thank, of course, Madam Gowri has left. Thank you, Mr. Sriram. I thank all the fellow Rotarians who have come here today and all the guests who have come here. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Good night. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.